Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the first live recorded edition of the BNO TechCast. And new format, also new set not really location, but I have a slightly different setup, new camera angle. So, and I have some current news topics that I want to discuss during today's show. And these topics are basically the whole controversy of Facebook becoming Meta. Then what's also currently going around in social media quite heavily is the whole discussion, is Linux ready to be not for every is Linux ready for the average consumer? Huge discussion at the moment. And then also from this week, we have the whole debacle with the new Intel Alder Lake CPUs and game compatibility, especially with modern game launchers and DRM for multiplayer titles. Then, of course, we have the next topic that will be the delay of Valve's Steamdeck. And last but not least, we will have two developer-centric topics. That is Microsoft's .NetConf 2021 that happened this week from Tuesday till Thursday. Really massive live stream event, almost 3 full days of streams. So lots of material over on YouTube. And we are closing off the whole show with the developer conference from Valve on the Steamdeck. So let's dive directly into it. So we are right now on my show notes for today. So this is my blog. So if you want to follow along, for everyone who is listening, the location of my blog is bnonet.com. And besides, of course, all the announcements for the podcast, I have also some written articles on here, also some guides and some announcements in regards to projects that I have been working on lately. So, but we are now going to the first topic page. So I grabbed this article from Road to VR, which is actually just also their tease to their podcast. Or I don't really know if it's their podcast, but I found the title pretty matching. And Facebook, in its glorious wisdom, decided to rename itself to Meta because they seem to have developed a new vision for themselves to create a metaverse, as they are calling it. And it's quite interesting when you compare the concepts that they're talking about to some stuff that you find in science fiction. And that really has spawned a controversy now where a lot of people are saying that Facebook or Meta, I have to get used to that myself, is basically creating an environment that is more like, creating a dystopian future, let's say. And because when you listen to their talks, it's really sounding like, people buy our cheap virtual reality headsets, and you will be able to go places where you will not be able to go anymore in the future, thanks to dramatically higher prices of flight tickets and so on and so forth. And that, of course, that's not the only thing, but especially when you also consider all the data that again will be associated with it, with being more on this virtual platform. As a lot of commentators have said, for virtual reality and augmented reality, so the whole XR space, this announcement, this step is huge, but let's see what the implementation is going to be. So this is very, very interesting. So that's at least my take on that situation. Then we go over to the whole discussion in regards to Linux. I'm just opening Gaming on Linux for reference here. It's since this is more general, more general discussion. We had also on some friends' streams a lot of discussions on this topic in the past few days and weeks. And in social media, you had, of course, the Linux challenge from Linus Tech Tips that they started, and recently also a video by Epos Vox, if I remember correctly. And every one of them basically ran into stumbling blocks during their experiences. And the whole discussion in regards to, is Linux ready for the average consumer, really was spawned thanks to Valve announcing that they're going to release the Steamdeck based on Linux. And as a preamble, from my perspective, I have been using multiple different operating systems over the year. I have daily driven Windows, I have daily driven Linux, I have daily driven Mac OS. So for me, overall, all of these operating systems have their advantages and disadvantages. But I myself am a developer and I am a power user. So it's hard to really say, okay, that my experiences with these platforms are equal to the experiences that a normal consumer would have. And that is really the for me, out of all these videos, the key takeaway. Because when you're going into Linux, you can definitely daily drive it, definitely, for work and play, but it really depends on your use case and the distribution you're choosing for that, and that will heavily define the experience that you will be having, because both both Linus Tech Tips and EPOSVox basically ran into issues with their specific distributions, and knowing things working on other distributions, yeah, it would have been a different possibility. But yeah, and as they, I think it was Linus Tech Tips pointed out, a huge problem at the moment is the advice for new users which distribution to choose. Sometimes you have even information in the same articles that are controversial to itself. So, for example, for Ubuntu, it says it's beginner friendly, easy to set up, and on the contrary side, it says, yeah, you have it's hard to configure. So, what? And this is something that hopefully through these kinds of discussions that are now happening, hopefully there will be articles, tutorials, or videos that will give people guidance for these kinds of choices. So that will be a huge step for making the experience for new Linux users a lot better. And of course, one point also was when you're going into gaming, it depends on your use case. There are a lot of places that you can find out which games are running well, or basically running out of the box. If your games that you want to play fall into that category, it's easy sailing. But there are also games that you have to put into some work to get them running, and there you're again very heavily dependent on the community. And if you're not familiar with the community and the technical stuff, that can be hard. But important to say, since Valve is now working on SteamOS and the whole integration with Steam for basically every game that they have on their catalog, that is something that is probably about to change, at least for games that are still actively sold on Steam. For third-party games or games that are not sold anymore on Steam, that situation will be different. And talking about Linux and the we have the counterpart now. We have Windows, which Windows 11 is of course one of the big reasons why a lot of people would like to switch or would like to have an alternative. And there have been issues in the past few weeks and months, especially with AMD CPUs, and they have been remedied as far as I have seen. And now that earlier this month, Intel's Alder Lake has launched, there is now again a controversy in regards to DRM, where we are seeing again that DRM is having issues with the new CPU architecture and how the new Windows kernel is basically scheduling the different jobs and tasks to do. And yeah, there's quite a few games affected. I think, what was it, 21 or something for Windows 11. And there are also games affected for Windows 10. The problem that I'm seeing with that, since Windows 10 is not going, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. My problem with this is since a lot of people are still running Windows 10 for various reasons, and the OS is still supported till I think 2025. Intel already announced, or I don't know if it was Intel or Microsoft, but it was already announced that the fixes for the Windows 10 issues will probably be handled sometime next year. So definitely forcing people again to migrate over to Windows 11, even if they don't want to. And seeing all the various other small quirks and issues, and of course the UI changes that not everyone really likes. That's not a nice strategy, I have to say. And as also other commentators have said, the usefulness of DRM is really questionable, and you in general have issues with Windows 11 and DRM because the Microsoft enabled VBS and HVCI in Windows 11 when you do a clean install. If you upgrade from Windows 10 to 11, you don't have to deal with that. But if you do a fresh install or have a new system, it's enabled by default. And that technology, or those technologies, are basically virtualization or containerization of applications in Windows, so that each application is running in its own secure container. And these DRM systems, they cannot access these protected parts. And then they're saying, yeah, there is something blocking me of verifying stuff. No, so I don't let you play the game. And the behavior of games that people have seen is very erratic. Even games with the same DRM are behaving differently. They behave differently in a different system. So it's a mess, basically. So what of course would be interesting to see is, do those games, or in general, do issues like this exist on Linux with the new architecture? Because I don't know. It's a new architecture. You have, when you adopt the new architecture, you have quirks that you have to deal with, and this is one of those quirks. So this is an issue that will not be permanent. It will be resolved at some point. So yeah, but still, it would be interesting to see if some systems on the Linux side also have issues, or if it's not a problem at all because perhaps the Linux kernel already has big little architecture support baked in from the ARM compatibility or something. I am not sure there, but perhaps if someone is running Linux on a Alder Lake system, yeah, let me know in the comments or through my blog or via Twitter. And yeah. So next up, we have we are back basically to the Steam Deck. The Steam Valve also got hit by the worldwide shipping shortages. A lot of people have been looking forward to getting their Steam Decks in December or early next year. And yeah, when the news broke this week, it really was not a huge surprise to most. However, the delay is not dramatic, at least at the moment. The future will tell if that remains. I just heard in another news update today that some places shipping situations are actually improving. So fingers crossed that this trend is going to continue, and the whole situation with shipping delays is not going to continue as crazy as it is in 2022. So for people who went into the registration queue for being able to order in December of this year, the order period has been shifted to the first quarter of 2022. So probably somewhere between January and March, it will be possible to start ordering the Steam Deck. Of course, it will be interesting to see what is then the actual shipping period resulting after that. So the way Valve does this is giving them a lot of options for handling that, which, from my perspective, is fine, since they're very upfront with the communication in regards to schedules and their issues. And yeah, the sad thing that I have to say for people who are in the queue for, or were in the queue for Q2 of 2022, they now don't have a firm window when they could be expecting to be able to order their Steam Deck. If you are not getting into the queue now, it already says that you will be able to order starting queue after Q2 2022. But even for people who were in the Q2 2022 slot before, they now have the same statement. So their Steam pre-order page says sometime after Q2 2022. And for people who did this pre-order earlier in this year, that's not that nice. I would have understood for that time frame for new orders, but I can't understand it for people who are already are in the queue. So having a window for these people should have been the way to go. So we're through with the different normal tech news of this week, or the last 2 weeks, and we're now going to the developer related stuff. So the first of those was the NetConf this week, and even Microsoft being new to the open source community game, they're doing a lot of things right in at the moment, at least in my opinion. Of course, there was a kerfuffle about them removing the hot reload functionality, and a lot of people are still pissed about it, which I definitely can understand, because the way that they implemented the hot reload functionality now, basically .NET wide, is a really, really nice functionality to have. And they also demoed that quite heavily at .NETConf. And that will be, if you are a .NET developer, that will be definitely a huge quality of life and time improvement, time-saving improvement. I have been in the .NET development world since, I don't know, 2007 or 2008. And I have seen this framework, or let's call it now also platform, grow throughout now almost 15 years. And it's quite impressive where .NET has come from as a Microsoft Windows only and proprietary solution, and now being basically a complete open source solution. They actually stated at .NETConf that .NET 6, which is now the new release that released this week with .NETConf, is the mainline .NET release. So, of course, there will be hotfixes for the old .NET frameworks, but they are actually offering transitionary tools for developers to get their legacy projects updated to .NET 6. And that not only involves the classic Windows applications, so WinForms applications, ASP.NET, and so on, but that also is the case for cross-platform applications that have been previously built on Xamarin Forms. And .NET 6, how they demoed it during .NETConf, reminds me a lot of how you can use React Native, basically, because now with .NET 6 and the Blazor and the .NET MAUI frameworks, you will be able to mix and match components from web, desktop, mobile, however you want it. And that it can be a huge time saver if you have a heavily connected application that uses all these different channels. So I was really impressed seeing that. Even for me, as someone who knows .NET well, .NET 6 will be a huge learning curve. And I'm looking forward to see how this technology develops in the next following years. Only that thing that I have to say is that .NET MAUI, which will be the new cross-platform UI framework, which is not yet launched. It will launch early next year. But they're delaying this especially due to quality reasons. And they're taking a lot of learnings from Xamarin Forms, and a lot of community contributions, and putting those into the core framework, which is a good thing. I actually have had it happen this week that I had an issue with a customer application where I had to find out that the library that we are using to load SVG images that has been used widely in the Xamarin Forms community in the past few years, that we used basically in all our applications, that this has not been maintained since end of 2019. And in 2020, there was a release of Xamarin Forms 5, and I had to hold back that particular application to Xamarin 4.8 due to some glitches that I was experiencing. I thought they were Xamarin related, but as it turned out, they were related to that library. And now, due to an issue with iPhone 12 and 13 mini devices, I was forced to update, and found out that this library was causing the issues, and I had to implement a fix for that. So, and thankfully, since the .NET community is really big and active, and there are a lot of samples going around, I was able to base this on 2 older articles and a component that was also out of maintenance. And I published a new open source package this week that addresses this issue, which enables proper SVG loading now from embedded resources for Xamarin Forms 5. And the customer app is back in production with those fixes since Thursday, and everything seems to be well. So I'm glad about that. And so this is an example why putting stuff from the community into the core that is centrally managed is not always a bad thing. So that's a small side story from my experience this week. Yeah. And then we can go over to the other developer conference that we had on Friday, live streamed by Valve. And it seems like initially I got the info that it was basically invitation only, but if I read the other article here at Gaming on Linux correctly, it was always to be meant to be public. So nevertheless, my impression of watching the conference was definitely that it was targeted to developers that are not yet that familiar with Linux, and especially the Steamdeck. And so the information that they presented there, however, were nevertheless very comprehensive. For me personally, not much new information, but they went into several nice details that were good new information for the community. And the article that I have up from Gaming on Linux here is basically good summary. You will find the link to that in the show notes. I am actually going to repost those in the live stream chat as well again. I posted them initially, but it has been some time, so I'm posting them. Okay, and I'm not going through all the technical details that they discussed there right now, because it was really a lot. So they went through the architecture of the Steam Deck, component choices, how everything is going to interact with each other, and yeah, it's one thing that really surprised me actually. I don't know why I did not really have it on in my head correctly, but I thought that the Steam Deck would be running a Zen 3 CPU. So the current generation that is currently available for desktop and mobile. And during the presentation, I was actually confused because they showed slides that it was Zen 2. And I read it up, and yeah, it is Zen 2. So the comparable to the Ryzen 3000 processors. And yeah, we were discussing this, I think yesterday, and I checked some community conversations about that since then, and the logical explanation why AMD is using that particular architecture is that there is no Zen 3 based APU architecture at the moment. AMD is actually developing that in parallel to the Stream Deck APU, but with Vega graphics. I'm still confused why they're not developing this with RDNA 2 right away, but yeah. Probably their approach is with the Vega graphics. They are a bit more energy efficient than the RDNA 2, but I don't know really. I don't really know that. Now I'm having a Bluetooth hiccup. Audio seems to still be there, so I'm going to continue. Yeah. One other thing that during the conference that really caught my eye was that Valve is going to allow third-party stores, so launchers. They named it during the conference. It was actually also a Q&A question. But if you enable launchers from different providers, for example, the Epic launcher is also store. So you have the ability to buy games and apps from other providers, and this intrigued me because recently I wrote an article about the whole App Store debacle. I show this one here as well. Where we currently have lawsuits between Epic Games and Apple regarding the conditions in those stores and so on and so forth. And as I wrote in this article here, for me, the most important thing in regards to what to allow on the device is the usage scope of the device. And Valve was pretty clear in their communication there, because they said the Steam Deck, first of all, is a gaming device, but it is basically a desktop, so a normal PC. So in the end, you can do whatever you want with it. Yeah, but what they're focusing on is providing the best gaming perspective, the best gaming experience first, and everything else will be second. And that's why they are also as far as I understand, focusing primarily on getting the current catalog working through Wine and Proton on Linux, and not pushing developers to do native ports, because that lowers the barrier of entry for those developers. And once they have established this new platform as the Steam OS / Steamdeck gaming platform, then with the user base that will result out of that, then you have a lot more missing the word. Companies have a lot more interest in investing and developing native versions that benefit much more from the efficiencies that you have on Linux. Yeah, so we are through with all the topics that I wanted to discuss today. A lot of interesting developments going on right now, so will be interesting to see what we have in the next few weeks. So probably the next episode will be, I don't know, next week or the week after next week. Depends a bit on my personal schedule. But I will definitely announce it on the blog and also on my Twitter. So the blog is again on bnonet.com, and you can find me on Twitter at bnoffer. So these are the best two channels to see when I am actually live. And as I said initially, this podcast is now recorded as part of a live stream. And basically after this recording is concluded, I will go into a discussion / Q&A for a time. And the whole stream will afterwards be available on YouTube. Then thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you soon in the next episode. And you can find the links to the articles and topics that I discussed today on my blog. And on the YouTube video, there is a link to the show notes directly below the video. So, thank you very much, and have a good day.